Hello again. This is the penultimate video in the series where I'm mainly going to talk about installing the flue system onto the wood burning stove. But I thought I would just begin with the end really and show you the stove fully working. This is actually the first time I lit the stove, so it's quite a proud moment really. Going on to the flue system, I'd just like to talk about this telescopic section here, which I used. This wasn't actually in the original plan. So if you think back to my first video, I was planning to roughly follow a plan from the place where I bought the components for the flue, which was trade price flues. I wasn't going to follow it exactly. I had already decided that I was going to not go straight through the wall like this, but I was going to have a section coming up like that kind of thing. And I am so glad that I actually did that, because this design here, where you start with this elbow and an adapter and you put that directly into the stove and then you go straight out through the wall, I think is a pretty terrible design really, for a number of reasons. I mean, the first reason is this first section of stovepipe, which comes out of the stove, gets very hot, and I don't really understand the point of wasting that heat and allowing it to just go outside the house. Why not have this section inside the house so it can heat your room or heat your entire house? So it doesn't make sense from that point of view to me. Maybe there is a reason for it, but I don't really see it. Secondly, I don't really know how you could even fit it like this, because firstly, I mean, you would have to get this hole here in exactly the right place, more or less, for this to fall exactly and couple up with the stove here. So if you look at this in-between stage where I've actually got the section that goes through the wall, you know, what are the chances of getting this to exactly meet up with the top of the stove and fit snugly between this rim? I mean, this rim will become important later. So on the top of the stove, there is like quite a wide rim. The height of this is probably about 1.5 inches. It's not a narrow rim. So even if you did get this hole in the exact perfect position and it exactly met up with this stove at the exact right position, how would you even get it in? Because all of this is rigidly attached to the wall. So all of this is rigid, you can't move it. All of this is rigid, you can't move it. I mean, it is telescopic, but, you know, that's not going to allow you to get that nozzle there into the rim, into this rim here, because none of this can move. So that's another reason why you absolutely have to have this telescopic section here. The only way I could see you might be able to do it is if you use the method of making a massive hole in your wall, and then, you know, you've got all this wiggle room where you can move this section up and down, but it would have to be before you'd actually bolted it onto the wall. So you'd need people on the outside holding it in place while you got it into the perfect position, and then you would have to, you know, attach this onto the wall, which is not perfect. But even if you did that, once you've bricked all of this up and this is attached rigidly to the wall, what are you going to do if you want to maintain something? What are you going to do if you want to change out the stove? What if you have to do some maintenance on the stove? You can't get it out from here. So, I mean, all of this is rigid. You don't have this telescopic section. How do you get the stove out? It's impossible. You would basically have to, I don't know, you'd have to destroy this piece by cutting it, or you'd have to cut this collar off, or you'd have to completely detach this away from the wall again so this could move about. And who would want to do that? So with this method of having a telescopic section, all you would have to do is collapse this telescopic section, then the stove is completely separated from the flue, and you could just move it away from the wall and, you know, pick it up, send it to a repair centre, or maybe you want to replace the stove, maybe you want a multi-fuel stove. You know, I thought in future maybe I'd want a multi-fuel stove instead of a wood-burning stove. So if I wanted to do that, I could just collapse this telescopic section and just pull the stove away from the wall and then just replace it with another stove and just whack that straight in. So moving on to the rest of the flue installation, I have to be honest and say that I didn't take a lot of videos of this because it turned out to be an absolute nightmare. And that was purely because of the height that I was working at and not having scaffolding and not having adequate ladders and that type of thing. I think if it was closer to ground level or you did have adequate scaffolding and ideally someone else to help you up there, it could have been done in, you know, a few hours or half a day, but it ended up taking me absolutely ages. So what I intended to do first was to get this long branch T through the wall. And my idea for doing this, because of the height, was to attach the branch T to one of the 100cm lengths. And then I was going to go up a ladder up here, basically going to try and lift this whole thing through and just stick it through the wall, basically. And I was going to have a locking band, one of these clamps that attaches it to the wall, set around here. And when I'd put this through the wall, I was just going to flip the band around it to hold it in place as a first step. So I showed this a little bit earlier. This is after it was completed, after a lot of agony and pain. This also has the 45-degree angle and the adapter here, which wasn't on when I was initially putting it through the wall. But that's just to show you what I ended up with when I'd successfully done it. So this might give you a better idea. This is the base plate for the wall bracket, which I put just above the hole through the wall. This was another problem because this was way too low. I just guessed, basically. It should have been much higher up here. Where I'd actually put that bracket, I think it would have been over where the band actually connects the long branch T to the 1 metre length, and it would have interfered with the attaching band between them. So, like I say, I had to move that bracket up further, and eventually I put it about there. So here's a comedy style Benny Hill type video of me trying to put that in place. Yeah, so you can see this band here. That's what I was planning to just like scoot around the pipe here to hold it in place. That's why it's kind of hanging loose. And I know it probably looks like I could probably just have gone up a couple more steps on the ladder and got that in the wall, but I just couldn't do it. It was too heavy. The ladder was too steep and I just could not do it. So what I ended up doing was I put in a raised platform attached to the side of the house and the side of this wall which divides my property from the neighbour. I basically used a ledger board which I attached using sleeve anchors. You can't see here because I've not done it yet, but I also installed another one of these further up on the other side of the ladder, up about here. So this is about 1 metre off the ground, and I put in another one here which was about 2 metres off the ground. And eventually I managed to get it in using the original method after moving the wall bracket a lot higher. Another thing you can see here is this base support, which is another component which I didn't originally buy. I'd read that a lot of installers don't actually use these to save money, but I found it was absolutely essential because just relying on these wall mounts and these straps was just not good enough because they're not all that firm. They sag, and I used very good quality metal wall plugs to attach them to the wall, but they still sag down, so it just wasn't adequate, and this base support was absolutely essential. What you can also see in this picture is I've actually got two 1 metre lengths on here. Initially it was just this 1 metre length. To get this one on, this was another improvisation. I actually had to put some kind of strap on it. It was some fabric strap, and I had a cord and I ran it through to this dormer window here, and basically I think my daughter was 10 years old at the time. She was pulling on this strap to lift this up in the air while I was up the ladder, kind of guiding it. Using this method, together we managed to get this extra 1 meter length on top of the initial one, and I put the locking band around there. Later, which is not in this photograph, I also managed to put another wall bracket further up, so there was another wall bracket around here. And I also put these things that they call extra wide locking bands around here, and I put them on every single connection just to make the whole thing more sturdy. They're meant to support an unsupported length of up to 2 meters. A couple more views of that. So the next problem was that even after adding this additional 1 meter length, this stack is still not high enough, mainly because of this dormer window here. The building regulations say, I think, that you have to have this at least 1/2 meter above any window opening in close proximity, and this was roughly sort of halfway up here, so it needed another meter length on top to bring it to about 1/2 meter above that window opening. I mean, it does make sense really, because if this window is open and you've got hot sparks coming out of here, which is unlikely, but potentially they could go in through your window and land on your bed and set your house on fire. So it does make sense. So to fix that, I put a climbing rope over the house. Over the other side of the house, it's attached to part of the tow bar on my car, and then ran down this side loosely. And then I climbed out of that dormer window with a climbing harness on and this, I think it's called a descent unit, and I kind of shimmied or sideways abseiled, I don't know what you would call it, holding another meter length. And that's what I ended up with. That's at the proper height, so that's got 3 1 meter lengths. There you can see the wide locking band, which is able to support like a longer length with no supports. Obviously there's no supports here. One option would be to put like a guy rope on here for support, which I considered. I might do that in future. These wide locking bands actually fit over the normal locking bands, so it's not one or the other. You've got to use both. And here's a video of me on the roof with the climbing harness. I'll just show you what this device is. This video was taken actually after I'd done the job already. I didn't manage to video myself doing the actual job. It would have been too difficult. Just a couple of other things from earlier that I missed out. I actually filled up any cavities between the wall sleeve and the hole that I had drilled using heat-proof expanding foam. As you can see in this video, I've also taped off the inside just in case any expanding foam wanted to come through here. Obviously I put too much in, like you do, so I removed any excess with a saw. The other thing I didn't mention is that I filled up the gap between the wall sleeve and the T-piece with rock wool, and you have to make sure that it's pure rock mineral wool, which is non-flammable, and that's just another picture of that. And the other thing that I worried about, which I couldn't find any information about online, was rain getting in. Basically, if rain was falling down here onto this 45-degree bit, the T-piece, wouldn't some of it sort of trickle through here and then come into the inner wall of the house and drip down the wall? And I can confirm that yes, that does happen. Not a lot, but you do get drips coming through, and if it's a heavy storm, you're going to have like rain dripping quite a lot down your inside wall. So what I had to do was, in the same place where I'd put the rock wool, which obviously is going to let the water through, it's not going to stop water going through, I had to put heatproof silicone, so a waterproof seal around here, covering up the rock wool and stopping any water coming in. Where the telescopic bit went into the collar on top of the wood burner, I used fire cement around the small gap which was left. I also put heatproof silicone around the joint between the two sections of the telescopic bit because I was worried about fumes coming up through here. It looked a bit of a mess though, so I removed it afterwards. So yeah, that's about it really. I mean, it's not rocket science. All you really do is you just use the provided bands to connect the bits of the flue together. You bolt the outside bit onto the wall, and that's it. Anyone could do it really. So the next video is just going to be on about a summary of, would I do it again? I'm also going to talk about the council and, the fees you have to pay to the council if you do it yourself. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my videos. If you have, give a like and subscribe because it would really help. And thanks for listening, and thanks for watching.